welcome back, everybody, to the Applied Imperative podcast. This week, I'm thrilled to have a special guest with us. This person is somebody that I met on the MIT program that I talked about on a recent episode, focused on artificial intelligence for senior executives. So I'd like to introduce Prabha Jha. She is the Associate Director for Cyber Strategy and Risk at Verizon. And, this is a very different kind of industry to what we do here at Applied CAX, but we have a very common interest in artificial intelligence, technology, and where all of this is heading. And Prabha very kindly said that she would love to join me on the podcast. So welcome, Prabha. Could you just maybe introduce yourself quickly in your role and give a little bit of context?
Yes, and Dale, thank you so much for having me here. It's an honor. It's an honor to be part of the podcast. So, as you rightly said, I head the cyber hygiene and strategy for risk in function of a business information security office. And like you said, I mean, meeting at MIT campus as part of the AI program is coincidentally, and of course, brilliant minds, a lot of the brilliant minds that came together discussing a very relevant topic. I don't know anybody in the technology today, regardless of the industry, is not touched by the AI and want to learn more about it.
hmm Yeah, for sure. It's everywhere you turn these days, whether it's in the technology sector or just general media, right? Everybody's talking about AI, and it's a fascinating area, which is why I wanted to get into it a bit more with you. I think there's a few things that we'll be talking about. The program itself. I had really great impressions just of being at MIT, and as you kind of hinted to there as well, some fantastic people that I met, including yourself, and just really blown away by the caliber of people. But also, how you view AI in your role and what you're looking at and where you think this might go. I know you're also giving a keynote soon around prompt engineering and agentic AI, and this whole area of agentic AI is a very interesting area as well. I was listening to a podcast this morning about these new protocols that are coming out that are allowing agents to talk to each other. It came from Anthropic, I think. So there's a lot going on in that area as well. So those were some of the areas I wanted to talk about, and obviously anything else that you want to bring up as well. So looking forward to
Yeah,
it.
no, absolutely. And like you said, agentic AI, I mean, very broad concept itself, and there are different components underneath it, and a lot of confusion. So I would love to get into more about what it really means as agentic AI, one of the underlying technology for engineering, kind of a definition of architecture, but then also layering into that prompt engineering aspect and the practice of crafting effective inputs that really enables business. And I think one of the core learning that came out of the first week at MIT was just understanding the maturity of that has already happened for all the work in last 5 to 10 years of investment that DeepSeek and other giants have put out there, ChatGPT, is really these LLM models that are currently now at the disposal, and small businesses and medium-sized businesses and even users like me and you can take advantage just by honing the craft of prompt engineering.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think we're really standing on the shoulder of giants from all that work that's happened before, right? And the models kind of get trained and they learn so quickly from everything that's gone before it. And I think prompt engineering itself, like you said, if you know how to prompt it correctly, don't lead it into bias, give it a certain amount of detail, but maybe not too much sometimes. So there's definitely a bit of an art and a skill in that, but it's getting, better and better over time, obviously, and understanding more and more about what we want. And I saw that OpenAI recently now have expanded the historical context, so we'll start to remember a lot of your conversations, a lot of the context that you give it, who you are as a person, what you do. So it's going to be really interesting to see that going forward. So, you mentioned the MIT piece there as well. So let's use that as a springboard. What were your impressions from being on site at MIT? Did you get any major observations and takeaways from that week that we had there?
Absolutely. I think I would say just being part of a program that has such a wide reach. I think that's the biggest thing that surfaces when I think about it and reflect on the week is the quality of the class that comes in. I guess that is the top item. And things that comes out globally, right? A class of 80, but representing more than 20 countries. That is just an incredible feat in itself. And plus, bringing in that experience, not just that geographically it was diverse, but the industries represented in the class. And the second piece I would say is the just the professors and the materials that we went through. So being mindful of, right, as we bring in this cohort of very globally diverse and industrially diverse. I mean, look at us. I come in from Verizon and very traditional telecom company, while you are in aerospace. And we had so many finance and Google and Amazon, while somebody making smart glasses and things like that. It was essential on how do you bring this together with that level of knowledge and information around something that's really groundbreaking. So the quality of professors and the diversity of knowledge gave me an opportunity to, I would say, break my mold and think out of box. As you stay in your industry, you are always thinking about how am I going to solve that problem that's specific to mine. We don't really take that opportunity to know. Maybe I want to understand how things happen in healthcare. So I think those two aspects are the key things I left with after that first week.
Yeah. Yeah, some great observations, and I completely agree with you. I think they mentioned at the beginning of the week, it's very rare that you get to spend time outside of your industry with all these people. And then there's a parallel here to AI in general. When you think about how the IQ of AI is getting better and better, and you talk about in your pocket very soon, you'll have like a top level researcher in every field. So not only will you be able to go deep in your own field, but you say, okay, how would somebody from this industry look at that? And maybe we'll start to see combinations of different industrial viewpoints coming together. So that's an interesting observation as well. Um, okay, how have your first few weeks of remote learning been for you? I know there's been some complex topics that we've been talking about. So how have you found it so far?
That has been a mixed, I would say. Like you said, as we were talking briefly when we started, right? Every module has been different and some more heavier than the other. I would say the first week I felt completely lost for my own reason, as you kind of come in drinking from the fire hose and you are like excited at the same time. You're catching up on work. Most of us are at the executive level, and it's like, damn, where do I start? Although I feel much more comfortable now, like we are 4 weeks deep into it, we have a cadence with our classmates, and we are finally getting around that, oh, this is something that's my forte, or I'm getting stuck here. This is not my forte. Who do I reach with? And just become resourceful. And Dale, I want to hear from you as well. Like, what is your take on it so far?
Yeah, it's very similar to you. I think I was a little bit lost in the first couple of weeks. There's some very detailed math. I had to remind myself, and I'm an aerospace engineer, so I use math all the time. I had to remind myself how to multiply vectors, what a dot product was. We talk about gradient descent, and you're changing all these parameters in these models, and there was a bit of coding in there. So some of it was optional, but it was like, wow, this is really quite intense. Having said that, I've been taking notes as I've been going through, and I think I'm able to sort of zoom out and see why we were learning those things. And it is very interesting. It does give you a much deeper understanding. And this week's topic in particular, um, looking at transformers, and I'd heard a lot about transformers, but understanding how a transformer decodes, some input text, let's say, breaks it up into tokens, and the tokens are little snippets of a word or parts of a word, converts that into a number, like a telephone number, essentially, giving it a unique code that gives you the context of that word, and then re-encodes that later with the context of like, wow, what's actually happening there and how a transformer works to train a computer to understand natural language. It's been really interesting. So similar journey to you, very deep, a little bit lost, but sort of coming back now, I think, and seeing the bigger picture. So yeah.
Yeah. And I also feel, Dale, at one point, right, while we will take this in from all the different concepts, we will eventually pick the bits and pieces that will apply to our own industry where we we have like built our careers in, I would say. I mean, it's transforming constantly. It's not like anything is unique to any industry, but it's still bringing that piece back and picking up those bits and pieces that make sense and bring the business value right away. I think it's eventually going to happen. And I'm really excited to see as we hit that capstone week and the end product that everybody brings in and the changes they have made. That's going to be phenomenal.
Yeah, it's fascinating for sure. So yeah, that's an interesting way to just pivot a little bit into kind of your role at Verizon and how you're maybe looking to leverage AI and maybe part of this course as well. So how do you see all of that?
So, going in actually, and this is another interesting part of being in the program is like by the time day one was over, I wanted to dabble into and see and actually reach out to Verizon AI team and understand what's going on. And I learned so much more on how Verizon is approaching AI and some of the groundbreaking experiments we have already done and the infrastructure we have built already internally to leverage those usage. So as I started absorbing that information, bringing it in as a business information security office, it's important to play both the roles. One, which is, yes, we do want to secure how we use our data and how we are also leveraging that for the business. But at the same time, it's really important, especially with the competition that we have, that we are being that enabler. It is not a time that we shy away from AI anymore. It's about really leveraging it to the extent it enables the business while you are integrating security and being mindful of how you go about that. And I'm amazed to see some of the like leadership already involved on building that roadmap for the company already that we can leverage. So one of the key areas I've already, as soon as I came back, was able to get started on was payment card. Compliance always remains a huge um, challenge when it comes to any business dealing with retail, right, and credit card payments, and catching up on where my biggest risk is when it comes to security, identifying and then translating it quickly to in a manner where somebody can take an action to say, I don't want to understand all these details of vulnerabilities and CVs and all sorts of stuff. Just tell me this is my IP and tell me what I need to do. Do I need to patch or update or kill the switch? Right.
Right.
So I'm working towards leveraging some of the solution to provide a very simplified approach for monitoring and addressing that issue. And that can be a huge time saver.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Great to hear that you're seeing a use case there, and that holistically the company is looking at it from a sort of top level strategic viewpoint as well. I think to your point, you ignore this at your peril, right? Either you're going to lean in and you're going to try and learn about it and adapt it and adopt it, or if you ignore it, you're going to be out competed by other carriers or other parts of the industry. So yeah, it's time
Well
to learn
said.
more.
Well said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Okay, great. I know you're preparing for this keynote around, like we said, prompt engineering, agentic AI and agents and all that. Can you give us a little bit more about what you're thinking there, please?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I have been attending quite a few of the, sessions around it within industry and especially in security. And the keynote that's coming up in June at Kane University in New Jersey is focused on demystifying a lot of concepts around AI. And like I said, most of the companies right now is putting that pressure on your leaders to really enable AI and really find those areas, and this demystification is absolutely crucial. So one of the areas around how do I see as a business service provider of leveraging agentic AI versus prompt engineering. And it can be so confusing if you don't understand that underlying breakdown. But at the same time, not everybody needs to be a math major to be finding those or spending months developing a model by training data, right? And know about all that thing that comes underneath it with the generating the bias and how do you create and build that solution. So this the talk I'm doing is really about demystifying and putting in platter what it means for prompt engineering and what is agentic AI and how do you put them against each other in terms of simplicity or speed to build and leave my audience with a toolkit to say, prompt engineering is my directive strategy because that's where I want to see, because my priorities are autonomy, or my priority is flexibility, or my priority is error handling. Prompt engineering is not for you. That's when you
Right.
want to develop that agentic AI. But when you don't care about those things, but you are only thinking of simplicity and a speed to build, and you know you have a one shot use case, prompt engineering is your go to.
Yeah, yeah. That sounds really useful. I'm sure it's going to be a great conversation for people to follow along with and think about how they can use those two different kind of methodologies. So you mentioned a little bit about how, Verizon's looking at AI from a top level. Do you have any sense, anything else you want to share around what things are going to look like in the future? I mean, I'm sure, AI is being infused into our phones in general. That's coming from the phone manufacturer, but, there's all the services elements around all of that. Is there anything you think about and wonder in 10 years' time, this is how AI is going to change the kind of cellular landscape?
Dale, I think with the pace things are moving, 10 years is a long time.
Very true. Very true.
10
Impossible to
years.
predict.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that reminds me something, and you may remember this slide from our class in that 5 week was, and that blew my mind away, which was a human in an average is going to read somewhere about 750 or so books in a lifetime, and compared to an I think
Yeah.
we dropped the mic right there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's
So,
very true. There's a great book I read, Ray Kurzweil, The Singularity is Near, and then he just released a new one, The Singularity is Nearer. And he talks about by 2045, this concept of artificial superintelligence, where we have AGI, artificial general intelligence, right around the corner, apparently, and then ASI, where it's completely impossible for us with our very primitive brains to imagine what artificial intelligence that's millions of times more powerful than it is today, and to your point, can consume incredibly enormous amounts of data and then act on it, autonomously. It's just very difficult for us to even imagine that. So you're at that, exponential piece of the curve, and we just can't project ourselves there. So interesting
exactly.
times.
So I want to come back to your question though. So I don't think 10 years I can project, but absolutely in next 2 or 3 years. So Verizon is going to be ready, not only ready, but it's already ready, but responding to the needs of the market and the demands of the network. Obviously, capacity demand of network and power is going to be huge. So while we have, power is something else and a whole different industry, but network as a network provider is going to bring up a lot more on how we transit that massive amount of data use that AI is going to generate as a service provider. So responding to that, and I can definitely speak from security point of view, there is a lot that comes on the shoulders of a service provider to really protect our consumers. So, how do we leverage more real time sources of social engineering attacks that comes through either our digital platforms or our IVR solutions and building intelligence, like you said, that massive amount of data where superhuman power can absolutely lean in will be effective to protect our consumers and their data and information. Also, I guess one of the first use cases out there has been about customer experience, right? And support. So making sure that implementing solutions. And I think we have already put it out there few months ago, where as our customers are calling in and the reps are responding, they are utilizing systems that are already leveraged out there to provide something that meets the need of that consumer. And it's
Mhm.
not generic, and you're not fumbling through, 5 systems,
Right.
versus you are able to rather quickly providing the top-notch service that we take pride in.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. That's really interesting. Yeah, and you mentioned a couple of some sort of risks there as well. Is there anything else you see from a risk perspective, and especially given your role, that maybe there'll be some super agent AI that's attacking the system, or AI gets things wrong, and we've got to be very careful of that. Obviously, if it starts to hallucinate. So, is there anything else you see around
Yeah,
risk?
yeah. Well said. Well said. And it is always a moving target, right? As we are getting smarter, as we are building that guard up, our adversaries are getting smarter, right? If they are using similar or same technology that's now available for $50 and $100 expense, you can spin up
Right.
a platform which is going to go and identify any vulnerabilities that might be out there, right? Before it took hundreds of hours to break out and find those, you can have a bot running and really quickly identifying based on the models. So those challenges are definitely out there, and identifying those. So scaling up on red teaming exercises and being step together with our adversaries and being one step ahead is
Right.
going to be an essential thing, and a risk for sure. Because technology now, with open source and everything else, it's not like we have the keys to kingdom. Everybody has it. And
That's
we
right.
are in this head on. And then the other part is, like you said, is about false positives and the hallucinations, and also building biases. So we definitely saw, when it comes to security, in all the data that we are using in building the model is generally about, oh, everything that is wrong and I need to correct that, versus what happens when it is not wrong.
Mhm.
So when we are building solutions in security for AI, we have to think about synthetic data and removing those biases about it's not always red flags, but how do you train your model to identify and be able to contrast and build a smart model? So yeah, those are all the things that we will be looking see. But I'm also very interested, Dale, like how you are applying what you have learned and anything that you see that's going to be groundbreaking there.
Yeah, I think aerospace is ripe for the application of AI as well. There's data everywhere. And, with Applied CAX, and we resell Siemens digital industry software. And there's a big concept in this industry called the digital thread. So you take the information that you're putting in at the very beginning of your design, defining your requirements, for example. That then gets linked to your 3D CAD models, where you're modeling the shape of the aircraft and all the components inside of it, and the wiring and the software, bringing all of that together, but tying the information all the way through so you can prove that your requirements are still being met, your design is compliant to the regulations. Then you go into test and you get the actual real world data to show that. And when you do test, you've got thousands of sensors on the aircraft pulling in data, and you can use AI to predict, are those sensors still in calibration? Do they need maintenance? You can use it to predict the effects of a certain condition that you didn't get to in flight tests, for example. You can use it to stitch all of this information together and help generate a report at the end for you based on previous reports that you did. You can help it make it help you be safer in flight testing, again taking lessons learned. So there's just this massive corpus of data that we can set AI onto within controlled boundaries. And again, there's probably going to be a human in the loop here for quite some time, but it will be this accelerant to helping compress product development life cycles. And when you're talking about multi-billion-dollar programs with hundreds of engineers, thousands of engineers moving along as you go through that cycle, AI in the loop is going to help you, I think, iterate faster on the design, be safer as you test, explore the design space more clearly. You can iterate thousands of configurations and make sure you've really dialed in on the best configuration, the best shape, the best materials, and just trim out some inefficient parts of the process. So I've got a lot of ideas about how we can apply AI to our industry.
Yeah, that's interesting, and that's it makes sense on how when you are dealing with a very heavily regulated industry, right?
Right.
And similarly, I would say I can again relate to that to say as we provide network services and heavily regulated environment from FCC perspective, also some of the PCI standard, also NIST maturity model, and so on. We need to
Right.
constantly be thinking about maintaining that posture. As we bring in new models, we are exploring more venues to leverage the data to build a smarter system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And you mentioned open source a little bit earlier as well, and that protocol MCP, I think it is, that Anthropic have just released, that allows these agents to talk to each other. That's open source, so people can collaborate on that. But it also exposes maybe some risks that we were talking about around that as well. So, are there any other sort of unlocks you see? Is it just we follow the scaling laws now for AI getting smarter and more powerful? Maybe there's these protocols that are going to help define the standards like APIs and web-based interfaces have done. Is there anything else that you think is going to be really interesting to see unlock, or is it just a case of let's just let it follow its process?
I must say that we, and after the course, and now that I'm absorbing a lot more, I am pretty confident about the maturity in the overall AI industry I'm starting to see versus where we were a couple of years ago. So there has been recently a PCI compliance also have published their guidelines around AI leveraging, and also NIST is publishing some, so which is National Institute of Standards and Technology, and it does look like it is while we worried about it, right? We worried about when internet came in and it's like, oh, it's wild west and everything is going to be destroyed. And yes, we did create dark web and we did create other venues on internet. So will AI be immune to that? No. But at the same time, we have governance built in, and some of these standards that are out there are already catching up and locking steps. So I'm really intrigued to see how we will evolve, keeping those guards up and still keeping the idea central, which is we got to provide what is the demand of industry. At the same time, we got to get smarter on how we do that.
Right. Yeah. One of the comments from the staff at MIT was around, it is early days, but the good news is as well, we can shape how AI is going to be deployed here. There are risks, and there is going to be disruption, but it's not too late for us to actually help craft how we're going to deploy this for the benefit of as many people as possible, which I thought was a really nice kind of empowering statement, I guess. And I mean, obviously, you're deeply involved in technology in your role. I just wondered if are you also interested in technology in general in life, or what else do you do for sort of fun? Like we've only talked about, our interest in AI. What else? What else are you into?
Oh, yes. I'm interested in a lot of things actually that is non-technical, because I think I do like spend most of my life working with technology. I am a yoga teacher and I run retreats. That's really very close to my heart.
Right.
And also, health-wise, I think finding that balance of your physical, mental, and emotional well-being is important. So I'm a big advocate of mental health awareness. So I speak on that as well. I'm a survivor of domestic violence and abuse. So I love to go back and give back. So I'm also an active advocate and volunteer there. And I also love to paint. I have an exhibit coming soon. So if you are in New Jersey, please stop
Yeah.
by.
Yeah, that's exciting. Wow, there's some very good stuff there, and deep stuff. Like you said, the yoga piece. You actually took us through a 5 or 10 minute exercise before one of the classes at MIT, which was really good. Just kind of just level set everybody and clear out any mental clutter. Right. So that was great. Thank you for doing that. Um, Okay, as we're getting towards the end here, just a couple of quick fun questions. What's the last book you read or something you're currently reading?
So I am actually, now you said that, I'm reading the book you just mentioned, The Singularity is Nearer.
Ah, okay. Okay.
Yes.
Great, great. Yes, it gets pretty wild when he goes, 15, 20 years into the future. But he's been very, very accurate in his predictions from 25 years ago, and everybody thought he was crazy talking about AGI by 2029. And now all of a sudden, everybody was, I think he might be right. And almost like, I think I read something like 85% of his predictions with regards to technology have been accurate. He was a senior director at Google looking at AI, for example, and he's just one of those very sort of sharp minds in this space. So it's a really good book for people to check out. Do you have any inspirational quotes? I love inspirational quotes. Do you have any that you use to keep yourself centered or motivated?
I think there are tons. I'm a sucker for book and I read a lot. I do really read a lot. But I think one that is stuck in my mind right now as I'm working through the art pieces that will be in the exhibit. Plus, we have Earth Day coming up next week. So the quote right now in my mind is Earth without art is just eh.
That's great. I love it. Yeah, very good. Very good.
Yeah, I think for Earth Day coming up, I want our audience to live with that.
Yeah, yeah, that's really great. Awesome. All right. Well, Prabha, I know you're a busy person, so I just want to take the opportunity to thank you so much for joining me. It was a real pleasure meeting you at MIT and for you to carve out the time to spend with us here. And like we said, different industries, but an interesting mindset, similar views in some areas, of course, and how we're looking at deploying these technologies. So thanks very much for joining us. Any final thoughts as we wrap it up?
Oh, thank you, Dale. It was an honor and really pulling it together, helping us here. You're bringing this incredible piece of information and engaging content. I'm absolutely thrilled to see what is coming up next. Thank you
Great.
so
Me
much.
too. Thank you so much. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening to this episode of the Implied Imperative podcast, and we'll see you next time.